Meta, speaking about great companies, this is a whole other level of a great company, right? The stock goes up every day. I think this stock's gone up like 20 or 21 straight days, some insane amount, like just ridiculous. It goes like literally, basically I can count on Meta stock going up every day in the public account. Like the public account pretty much goes up almost every day, it seems like, and a lot of that's due because Meta goes up every day, right? So the question is, what will I do with the shares? Obviously, I've sold off some shares as the stock's gone up more and more, right? I sold off, I think I've sold off, how many shares did I sell off so far? I think I sold off 200 shares so far because I think I used to have 1,800 shares on Meta. So I've taken a little profit so far here in Meta, but it's hard for me to like really put a big sell order in regards to Meta. And the reason it's so hard is because the valuation is still really attractive. And this is why I've only sold a little bit of shares so far. Because look at the forward P on the stock's around 28. Right? Now, keep in mind, Meta comes in and crushes numbers almost every quarter. So you see 28 there and think it's probably going to end up being like 25 or 24 or something like that, right? Look at stocks like Costco and Walmart, which business models aren't even close to being as good as Meta, right? Meta can do business all over the globe and I don't want to say make money for free, but almost, right? Costco and Walmart are very difficult businesses to make money, right? Like they need to have these massive pallets of crap transport all around and selling diapers and selling selling toilet paper and paper towels and selling cases of water and trying to make pennies at a time, right? Tough businesses. And yet Meta trades at far cheaper forward P. And look at Meta's revenue growth rate expected for this year, 17% roughly. Costco's at 8 or 9%. Walmart's at 5%. So this is why it's difficult for me to really sell Meta and get out there and be super excited about selling a big block of Meta. You know, if this stock was 1,000 a day, I would feel a little more comfortable selling a bigger amount, like let's say 200 or 300 more shares. But even here, it's still difficult, man. It's still really difficult. So Meta remains undervalued. It remains the most undervalued big tech company in the world by a pretty large margin, in my opinion. The only company I could think that's kind of in the same category as them as far as undervalued is Google. But the difference is Google's business model is being, potentially disrupted right now. Meta's not. Meta's disrupting business models while Google's potentially getting disrupted, obviously with Google Search, ChatGPT being a competitor, and LLMs and those sorts of things. So do keep that in mind, right? So the moral of the story is in regards to Meta, continues to be a lot of fun, and I do collect that dividend money in regards to Meta, right? Remember, they're paying those fatty dividends, and so every 3 months I get dividends, and I bet you they're going to go up on that dividend amount this year, and they're probably going to go up pretty substantially, and so the amount of dividend money I can make next year is going to be a lot more than this past year. Sofi Technologies. So Sofi, now we're up 126% on this stock. It has really gotten momentum here recently. Up 143% in the past 6 months. SoFi's rolling, like really rolling, right? If we look at their latest, and this is very important, everybody looks at this. This is their latest income statement. I give them a B-. It was pretty respectable, right? But they did have a one-off that really benefited the net income in a substantial way in the EPS. But you look at interest income, went to 743 mil versus 645. But arguably the most important number for the company is if you look at total revenue for the company, right? Net revenue, 734 million versus 615 in the same quarter last year. So the company continues to grow like a weed. Tough thing for me with SoFi in regards to selling, I still can't really sell SoFi. It's too early days with SoFi that I can't sell it. And the valuation would have to get so stretched on this one to make me sell it. Because here's the thing with SoFi. Like when I invested in SoFi, I'm investing in this company because I believe they have a chance to become a financial giant. Financial giants have market capitalizations of $100 billion or several $100 billion. And I look at SoFi and I'm like, geez, if this company could really execute on a high level for this next 10, 20 years, I think they could be a financial giant, but emerge as a much more profitable financial giant than anything we've seen before because of their asset-light strategy. And so overall, in regards to SoFi, it's one I can't even consider taking profits on. Like I have the 3,700 shares and all I keep thinking is, why don't I have 5,000 shares? Like I really wish I had 5,000 shares in the public account. So it is a little bit tougher to buy it now since the stock has went up 143% in the past 6 months, right? But in terms of selling, like I just can't do it. Like I just can't cash those shares there because I'm just like, it's too early days in this story. But at the same time, if SoFi was $100, believe me, I'd be cashing shares right now, right? Even if the stock was $75, I'd be cashing shares right now. The valuation hasn't reached some sort of level that I'm like, okay, this is silly, I got to cash shares. That's $16. It's not at a level where I'm like, oh my gosh, let me go sell my SoFi shares. So that's where I'm at in regards to SoFi. Palantir, same exact subject, right? Palantir, this is a tough one because obviously I've been taking profits on it, right? I had 5,555 shares of Palantir, and I've continued to take profits and take profits and take profits on this one. And it's one I really didn't want to take profits on, but the valuation is getting so ridiculous that it's the prudent action to take profits on this one. And here's why. I posted this inside the private stock group. And I just, you got to always run numbers, right, in regards to these companies and kind of figure out, especially when a stock goes up 1,497%, you got to ask yourself, is this justified? Does the valuation make sense? Am I likely to make money in the stock over the next 3 years, 5 years, right? It's something you always got to consider because there's thousands of stocks in the stock market. There's lots of opportunities out there, right? And there's a lot of stocks that are going to go beast mode over this next 3 to 5 years. So in the private stock group, I posted my bull case, base case, and bear case in regards to Palantir, right? And I said, now we really need to get to growth rates of 50% or more to get decent returns over the next several years, right? I said at even 30%, we're looking at dead money for the next 3 to 5 years. So here's what we're looking at. If I can run a bull case, now this is extremely bull case. We're talking about growth rates Palantir, hasn't ever seen or hasn't seen in a long time. 50% revenue growth. Not only are we talking about Palantir getting a 50% revenue growth, which is a very debatable thing if they'll even get there. Then we're talking about staying 50% revenue growth for the next 4 years. 50% 2025, 50% 2026, 50% 2027, 50% 2028. That would put us, keep in mind, $4.3 billion in 2025 for revenue. Company didn't even guide close to that. Company was in like the 3.7s range, right? $4 billion is kind of like a more of a bullish range in general. 4.3 is really stretching it. Like if they do 4.3 billion, I'll be a happy camper, but there's very, very much doubt that. It's very low probability. So in 2028, we're talking about a revenue number of about $14.5 billion, right? And if we're talking about 75% net income growth per year over that time, then we're talking about a little over $4 billion in net income come 2028. So if you're growing top line 50%, bottom line 75%, and people really think they can continue, then maybe the company trades like a 120 to 140 PE ratio, which puts the stock in 2028 somewhere between about 214 and 249, which gives you a decent compounding annual growth rate on the low end and high end, right? But that's how insane we need the growth rates to be for the next several years, for the stock to be a moneymaker over the next several years. This is the case we need. And once again, there's a lot of doubts if that's going to happen, okay? Now, base case, 40% revenue growth, 65% net income growth per year for the next 4 years. That puts us at $11 billion in 2028. That puts us at $3.2 billion in net income, right? At 100 to 120 PE ratio, because they're growing at such ridiculous rates, right? They'll put the stock at 141 to 169. Basically, you hardly made any money. You might even have lost to inflation, right? And in 2027, you got a negative return. Bear case. This is bear case. 30% revenue growth per year on average for the next number of years, right? 55% net income growth on average for the next number of years. You say 80 to 100 PE ratio, and you get a negative return. This, folks, is why I have been taking profits on Palantir, because the next several years for the stock do not look good. No, the next several months, and by the way, I'm going to share a strategy with you right now. If you don't want to sell your shares and you want to still make money on the stock, there's a way you can do that. But this one is going to be extraordinarily hard to make money on. Not once again, for the next few weeks, the next few months, anything can happen, right? If the stock stays momentum name, traders want to keep playing this for this next bit of time, that's fine. But over the next several years, which I'm always looking out, I'm always looking out the next 3 to 5 years. Whenever I invest in a company or whatever I'm thinking about my money's invested, I'm always thinking out to the next 3 to 5 years. How is this asset going to perform the next 3 to 5 years? It doesn't look good for Palantir. I can tell you that. Even with all the great growth rates and even with still accelerating growth, it doesn't matter because of the numbers I just ran you through. The valuation has climbed so substantially now. that the company is in like a no-win situation for the next several years. But that doesn't mean the stock can't go to 150 in the short term. Doesn't mean it can't go to 180. Who knows? It could go to 200 in the short term. Like anything's possible, right? You know, if Bitcoin trades at 100,000, anything's possible. Anything's possible. So in the short term, anybody's game. Long term, next 3 to 5 years, ooh boy, it's going to be tough sledding to get much for gains in this one. So here's a strategy if you're like, yeah, you know, I agree that I think this one's going to be hard to get gains over the next several years, but I don't really want to sell my shares. I don't feel comfortable selling my shares. I want to just continue to be a Palantir shareholder for years to go in the future, even if that means not good returns over the next few years. I have a strategy for you. It's called selling covered calls. So selling covered calls can be something that you do when you own shares of a stock and you think there might be limited further upside, but you really don't want to get rid of your shares. You could always sell covered calls and do something like that, right? Now, you could get potentially called out on that, but at the same time, you're going to make the premium on that. And that's the whole point of doing a covered call strategy, right? And I have videos inside the private stock group that go all into this, and I'm probably going to be putting together like an options basic and options advanced curriculums and 1000X somewhat soon here. But it's certainly a strategy you can employ if you're looking at Palantir and you're like, geez, the stock's $120 or whatever. And you're like, I really don't want to sell my shares today, but let me sell some covered calls that expire 3 months from now or 6 months from now or a year from now or a month from now or whatever, right? Some people even do it on a shorter term basis where they'll sell covered calls on a shorter term basis, right? So it's a way you can generate premium, especially if you're scared that this stock is going to be, you know, kind of a flatliner for the next few years because the valuation has gotten so ridiculous, right? And at some point, Palantir, the numbers will never be enough. And it's going to be very frustrating to people that have not held stocks before because there's going to be a day, and I don't know whether it's 3 months from now or 6 months from now or 9 months from now or 12 months from now, but there's going to be a day in this next year where essentially it doesn't matter what Palantir comes in for growth rates, the stock will move down. And that's going to people are not going to like that because they're going to be like, how could Palantir come with this number, and the stock is tanking on this? The stock's going down. They're going to be completely baffled by what's going on there at that particular time. And it's going to be because the stock has already priced in everything you could have ever imagined. And so at some point in time, it won't matter. The growth rate Palantir, people will start looking at it from a negative angle. Investors, shareholders, Wall Street will start looking at it from a negative angle. And also keep in mind, there's been a lot of people that have been buying Palantir over this past year that they're not really Palantir believers or those type of people. It's just looked at as an arbitrage opportunity to make money. Like a lot of these Wall Streeters probably don't even understand Palantir's business model. They've just been buying the stock left and right because it goes up, seems like almost every day. So they just kind of pile in money. And then as soon as you start to see some real weakness coming in the stock, those people flip out fast. They freak out fast. And then you see a massive cascading of selling essentially. And the more selling that happens, and it just keeps kind of becoming this like self-fulfilling prophecy of this guy sells and the next big investor sells and it's just a whole domino effect there. So, right now we have it on the upside though. We have this domino effect where it's just like people can't get enough of the stock. There's gamma squeezes going on. There's all types of stuff going on in regards to Palantir that's just like dominoes are just going the right way. That will break, and they'll probably break in the next 12 months. Potentially it breaks in the next 3 to 6 months. And so, selling covered calls to generate income in the meantime, it's not necessarily a bad strategy, right? I don't mind selling my shares. So that's the thing. I don't mind selling my shares. And the more Palantir goes up, the more I'll cash shares. If we see 125, I'm out more shares. If we see 150, I'm out more shares. That's the thing with me. It's about the money. I'm here to make money, and once Palantir has served its purpose, it's on to the next one, right? And there's a lot of other great opportunities I see right now that are going to be the next Palantirs. And so, that's the way I look at this game. Hey, I want to thank you so much for watching that clip. I hope you really enjoyed it. What I'm showing you in front of your face right now is 1000xstocks.com. This is such an important website and service to use if you want to research companies, if you want to understand companies on a high level, so you can hopefully get better results in the market. And we know as the years tick on, money compounds. It is so important you research companies, you compare companies, you're listening to conference calls, looking at SEC filings. All that's included into 1000xstocks.com. So to enjoy 1000xstocks.com and to apply for that service, you can go to the description area of this video, or you can go to 1000xstocks.com, whichever you prefer. So stock I sold here today is Palantir. Sold another 500 shares of Palantir at $124. Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't come as a surprise, really, because I've been cashing Palantir now, over the past few months. And so I just continue to get phenomenal pricing on Palantir. Happily selling shares to folks that are willing to buy them off me, right? So in regards to this one, right, the thing you got to understand about Palantir is this stock is now priced like it's a big boy company. They're now priced like they're a massive SaaS player, like they're a big dog, right? We're talking about a market cap that now is approaching $300 billion. That's incredible, right? And to put that into context, Salesforce, which is actually a big dog company, right, in this space, they have a market cap of just over $300 billion. So we have a very interesting dynamic where Palantir has now priced in so much future growth that the company is now valued like it's a big boy company, but they're still a long, long way from ever being an actual big boy company in terms of revenues and profitability, right? Here's the deal. If you look at Salesforce's, trailing 12-month revenues, it's $37+ billion, right? Palantir is probably going to do somewhere between $3.7 billion and maybe $4 billion in 2025. Maybe best case scenario is $4.2 billion. That would be best case scenario. There's nothing. There's literally nothing, right? Compared to somebody like a Salesforce that's doing a little less than $40 billion. So that's the thing you got to understand about what's going on here with Palantir stock and how ridiculous this is getting is it's now pricing in already that it's a big boy company. And we still got, it's going to take Palantir at least a decade to really become a true big boy company and get to revenues of, first off, you can make a debate if Palantir will ever be able to get to revenues of 30, 40, 50 billion, right? But let's say you're a believer and you're like, I can see it getting there. I think we're going to get to $30 billion of revenue someday, or 40 billion or 50 billion. That's definitely possible, but it's so many years from now. So many years from now. And that's the important thing you got to understand, right? And if you look at Salesforce's stock over time, right, and this is just the last 15 years or so, roughly, of Salesforce, 15, 16 years, what you're going to find is something very interesting. Now, keep in mind, Salesforce was never priced nearly as crazy as Palantir in regards to pricing in so much future growth. That's the first thing you got to understand. But even despite that, CRM's had 2 years where the stock fell around 50% roughly, right? Over the past 15 years. It had a 20% plus drop, and then it had 2 baby drops among that time, right? And so we're going to see a massive, massive crash in regards to Palantir stock eventually. But why am I not out there buying put options on Palantir right now? There's too much momentum still in it. The time to get involved with, and I wouldn't be surprised if eventually I do buy put options on Palantir and make a fortune. I wouldn't be surprised if I eventually make 6 figures on put options on Palantir when that time comes. I'm not ready for that yet. There's too much momentum in the name. Would I be surprised if Palantir was $200 3 months from now? 4 months from now? Wouldn't be surprised at all. You got to understand, when a stock like this has this crazy of momentum, right? You got to be very careful with trying to get your timing right in regards to this one, because you could have made the argument that this stock is way overvalued at $100 and now it's, approaching 125. You could have made an argument at $80, $70, $50, and it just continues to move up. That's why I'm not buying puts on this one yet. There will probably be a time when it's very attractive to buy puts, but it's not yet. Because here's the deal. If Palantir comes through again next quarter, another reacceleration of growth, we're talking they go 40% plus, right? With another great guidance. That gives you the fundamental story of it's still the excitement being there, right? And plus you got the trader momentum still there. Eventually this one will top and it will move down, but you gotta exhaust the momentum in it. That's the thing. You gotta exhaust the momentum and then come behind it with slower growth rates. So let's say we get to late 2025 and the comps start getting really, really tough, right? And the momentum kind of gets exhausted. Maybe that's a time. But I'm going to wait on this one to go against it until, the fundamental story starts breaking in regards to growth rates start slowing. And that doesn't mean Palantir is going to stop growing. The company is going to grow for the next 5, 10, 15 years. But when the rate of growth slows, like let's say they get up to like 45% growth, and then they go down to like 42%, and then they go down to like 39. By that time, the stock's already getting hammered because of how much they've already priced in. And so, and then all of a sudden, the more the stock goes down, the more the traders start to leave the stock, and then you get exactly the opposite of what's happened with Palantir over the past year or two will then play out over that next year or two, right? And it'll just be an onslaught of selling that will be, incredible. But it's not yet. And so for right now, it makes sense to sell shares. It makes sense to sell into the momentum. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm getting unbelievable pricing on this stock right now, and I'm selling into the momentum. But to go against it and make a bet against it, that's a whole different game. You got to understand. Very important, okay? Now, today I signed up 14 people in the private stock group have now hit six figures in their portfolios and sent them on in. So my wife had me sign these up. She's the one that actually sends these out, right? If you've been trained under me in the private stock group, what do I always tell you guys? I always tell you, be the house, not the player at the casino. The stock market can be turned into a big casino, right? You don't want to be because here's the difference. The player at the casino is playing on what? They're playing on emotion. They're playing on hope. They're playing on vibes. They're playing on, I think. What is the house doing? What's a casino owner doing? They're playing a game on what? Math. They're not playing on hope. They're not playing on, I think, maybe. And that's the issue. We got a lot of people in the stock market right now that, when I see it, that are kind of like, oh, I wish, I didn't sell Palantir last week, or, I wish I didn't cash out shares because it's even higher. And it's like, that's the same exact mentality as going to the craps table, right? And you win a bunch of money and you pull your money off, but then you keep standing there at the craps table. And then the next guy rolls and he's rolling everything and everybody's winning at the table. And you're like, gosh, man, why didn't I stay on that craps table? Or you're playing at the roulette wheel, right? And you win a bunch of money. And then you pull it off, but then you stay at the roulette wheel and you're like, I think it's going to come up black here. And it comes up black. And dang it, why am I not still playing on that roulette wheel? It's a gambler's mentality. I have no problem. If Palantir goes to 224 in the next 3 months, I have no problem that I sold shares, 500 shares today at 124. I don't care. I'm playing a game of math. I'm not playing a game of hopes and prayers. It's a different game. I'm the casino. Other folks are the house. I'm the one running the casino, right? And the other ones are the players at the casino. It's just a different mentality. And that's how you got to play this game. If I get a chance to take incredible profits that mathematically make sense, I'm going to take those. Like, that's just the name of the game. Like, I don't want to run off of hope of like, well, maybe it'll go to 500. Maybe it'll go to $500 billion mark. I don't care. Like, sweet. I got some more shares to sell. I got another 2,000 in the public account. I'll be happy. Give me $200. I'll be happy to sell another 1,000 shares. Like, it doesn't matter to me. If Palantir went up high enough, I wouldn't mind selling my whole position. That's just, it's a different mentality. There was a great interview done many years ago by 60 Minutes on Steve Wynn. This was actually done during the great financial crisis around like 2009. And when they were opening the Encore side of the building, they asked him, they said, hey, have you ever known somebody that came, to your casino properties? Because he also, before that, he owned Bellagio, he owned Treasure Island, he owned the Mirage, he owned casinos in Atlantic City. They say, you ever known somebody that, continually comes to the casino and wins over time? I said, nope, no one, right? Why? Because he's playing a game of math and other people are playing a game of hope. That's what you got to understand, and that's what I'm playing. I'm playing a game of math here, and I run the numbers, I run the projections, and I say, okay, this is and there's a very different story back in 2022. Like, the math around Palantir just made a lot of sense to be buying Palantir stock in 2022. Like, the math lined up. Like, if you looked at the balance sheet, what was on the company's balance sheet, you looked at the product, right, and kind of understood the marketplace and what future growth rates could go to for that product, it made a lot of sense to be a buyer of Palantir stock at that time, right? Like, the math lined up and the business lined up. The SWOT analysis lined up. Now, it's a dangerous game now at this point in time. The story's changed, right? And in that amount of time, we're talking about, the company's added $200 billion plus of valuation. So that's what you got to understand about this, right?